To all who come to this happy podcast, welcome. This is This Happy Place, a Disney podcast, and this is the series where I am rewatching every single movie to come from the Walt Disney Animation Studio. We are already on number 8, and that means we are on Make Mine Music. Wait, number 8? Let's see if that's right. So you have Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, Saludos Amigos, Three Cup. Yeah, so we're already on number 8. Fun fact, I spent lots of hours one day trying my best to be able to memorize every single movie to come out in chronological order, and I was able to do that. So that is one of my favorite special hidden talents that I have about myself. But like I said, we are on Make Mine Music, and I'm going to make a bet with all of you listening that if you interviewed or surveyed 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 people and asked them to name their favorite Disney movie or as many Disney movies as they can, I bet the number would be less than 10 to 15 people who would name Make Mine Music. Make Mine Music is perhaps the most forgotten Disney film ever made, and it's very likely a Disney film that you have never even heard of. In fact, if you even tried to look for this movie on Disney Plus, you would not be able to find it. It's the only Disney animated film to not be on the streaming service. Now, you can buy it on various services. I think you can get on the Google Play Store, maybe even Amazon. But before the age of streaming, this movie was relatively very hard to get access to after its initial release. I had to get it from my local library in order to watch it. But if you have listened to any of my previous episodes, you know that I usually give a brief history of each film before I get into my review of them. I will not be doing that this time, and let me tell you a little bit why. Make Mine Music doesn't really have an interesting history behind it. Movies at the beginning of the Disney history, like Snow White, will have a lot more history since it's also tied to the start of the studio. But with Make Mine Music, we have hit a point where the history really isn't all that interesting. The history of Make Mine Music can be summed up into one simple paragraph. And that is, Disney needed to continue to challenge himself in order to help the studio keep afloat and make money. The only problem with that was that animated shorts were not that profitable, and they didn't have a budget to make a full-length feature film. So Walt did something that landed in the middle of those: make a full-length feature film comprised of shorts. No one wanted to do this, not Walt, and especially not the animators, but this film was crucial for Disney if they wanted to have the ability to move forward. From a creative standpoint, Walt didn't want his animators to get stagnant or lose their touch. The last thing he wanted was to have his team not be able to animate because they haven't done it in a while, and Walt loved animation so much that he wanted to keep doing it. But by the time they needed to make Mine Music, it was too late to change the attitudes of the animators. Animators have been quoted by saying that Walt didn't feel warmly towards this movie, and this movie was nicknamed Walt's Remnant Sale. You can definitely tell that there just wasn't as much effort, care, love put into this. It's very obvious. And Walt and the animators were not the only ones who didn't like this movie. Critics didn't like the movie either. A lot of critics were hoping that this was Walt's peak, that this was going to be his the lowest point of his career. The movie has little to no relevance in today's culture. Perhaps the only thing that people may know originated from this movie is the restaurant Casey's Corner that is in the Magic Kingdom in Florida. Casey's Corner is also the name of an animated short in this movie. This is a very difficult film to try and review for several reasons, but the main one being that out of these 10 shorts, I have the same feelings about pretty much every single one of them. So rather than reviewing each of the 10 shorts individually, I'm going to express my feelings towards the movie as a whole because, like I said, I had similar feelings throughout this entire experience. There were 10 shorts when this movie originally came out. However, the copy I got from my local library didn't have the first short called The Martins and the Coys. So nothing I say from here on out is referring to that short just because I haven't seen it. Apart from its original release, that movie has been cut on subsequent releases. There are two pretty big flaws that are noticeable right away when talking about Make Mine Music. When you watch the packaged films that came before this, mainly Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros, you had little breaks in between each short to help catch your breath. That was nice because it didn't make you feel like you were running a marathon watching one short after the other. These little breaks in between each short also provided a way for each short to feel interconnected with each other. For example, in Saludos Amigos, you saw actual footage of their trip down south in between each short, and even in Fantasia, you had the conductor of the orchestra introduce each part. There is no sense of connectivity in this movie, and that really hurt it. One thing I do need to keep in mind, however, is that the shorts in this movie really were never meant to feel connected. They were simply put together because animated shorts weren't really profitable by themselves, and they needed to be put together in order to make money. But nevertheless, I think this movie proves that you can't just put animated shorts together in one movie and have it feel like one. The other main flaw that goes hand in hand with that first one, about not having any interlude moments between each short, is just the fact that there was 9 shorts within like an hour runtime. I feel like that is just too many. It is a weird feeling of finding it hard to catch my breath because the shorts just kept on coming and I kept on finding myself bored. This was the first time I've ever watched this movie, and even I can tell that I don't like a movie when I watch it for my first time. And even if I can tell that when I'm watching a movie that I'm not going to like it, I still like to sit down and watch it without distractions. When it comes to this movie, though, there was something special about it that made me crave wanting to do something exciting while this was playing in the background. So I ended up warming up some taco soup that my wife made the night before, and I have never felt so bored watching a Disney movie as I was watching this. This movie is probably the least feeling Disney movie. It really makes sense as to why when you consider the history of like even Walt himself didn't really care for this movie. If this movie was needed to help keep the Disney studios afloat, that is great. At least this movie did something positive for the world. But as I did with the other packaged films, and as I was starting to review this, I was doing it one short at a time, and then like I mentioned before, as I was going on, I realized I was saying the same thing about the majority of these shorts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sum up the negative feelings I have for most of the movie, and then I'll do some shout outs for things that I feel garner extra attention, even if that's negative or positive. I mentioned I was bored while watching this movie, but why exactly was I bored? First, there was absolutely nothing to stimulate my brain. Several shorts were very monochromatic in color and lacked any sense of variety. Those shorts that decided to venture out with color were poorly animated. You can tell it was cheaply done. Now, there's a difference between two things that were done cheaply, but you can still do animation good even on a cheap budget. Think about Dumbo. Dumbo had a low budget, so they had to do cheap animation. The only difference between Dumbo and Make Mine Music is that Dumbo used that cheap animation for its benefit. It provided a sense of character into the film in a way that heightened what you were watching. It was still fun to watch. None of the animation in this is necessarily fun to watch, but in Dumbo it was. You can tell that the animators were actively losing interest when working on this project. For example, one short was simply 2 ballerinas dancing. However, these ballerinas were just black silhouettes dancing in front of various abstract color backgrounds. But since they were just silhouettes, you couldn't even appreciate it fully because they were just black figurines. It was a real bore for sure. Apart from looking at it, what you were hearing wasn't that engaging either. In the first short, the songs were really dull. Maybe it just wasn't for me, and maybe you will like it. That's the great thing about film, right? I can absolutely hate something and you can love it. But I certainly did not love it. It almost felt like they were scarred or they were scared of using big, extravagant pieces of music, so they just picked the most uninspiring ones. The mix of poor visuals and poor music result in a boring production. Another example I can give is in this short, I can't remember the name of it, but there is this man who you don't see, just his voice, singing a love song with the most stereotypical lyrics like, "What will I do without you? I feel lost without you." There's nothing inherently wrong with those specific lyrics, but that is essentially the basis of the entire song. There weren't any other interesting lyrics to pair it with. The visual you see as this song is going on don't match the mood or tone of the song as well. It's just a random winter landscape and it completely lost me. With all that being said, there were a few elements that I liked. The first, this is not really I liked, I was just kind of taken back by it, is it's the biggest plot twist in a film I have ever seen. Not really, but it did make me scratch my head. In one short, it's about these two hats, a fedora and a bonnet, who fall in love while they are together at a hat shop. The bonnet gets sold and the fedora gets sad. Eventually the fedora gets sold as well, and he hopes he will eventually see Alice, the name of the bonnet, again. He does see it in the crowd and he leaps off his owner's head to chase after her. The fedora, who has a name I already forgot, gets lost and goes through experiences where he gets trampled on and other things a hat wouldn't want to go through. Eventually, he lands in the gutter and almost gets taken through a sewer underground. But before he gets rushed under, someone picks him up and cuts holes in him on the top. You think it's because he wants to put the hat on the dog or something, but you would be wrong. The holes were for a horse's ear. So sitting on top of the horse's head, Fedora gets sad, but guess what? There is a horse next to him. And guess what is on that horse's head? Alice the bonnet. Nothing has indicated that Alice is going to be used for a horse, so that just felt really random for sure. But hey, at least they are together again. The last short of the film is called The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met. A whale who is capable of something that sounds like three people singing is discovered by a person who runs the Met looking for a new talent. While on a boat trying to capture Willie the whale, his crewmates try to stop him because this whale deserves to be free. While this whole thing is going on, we hear Willie the whale sing opera music, all while he is envisioning himself performing as the Met dressed as a clown, like the devil breathing fire. Yes, this film does feature a whale breathing fire. However, after Willie is done singing, he gets harpooned and swims the rest of his days in pain until he dies. This film describes this opera singing whale as a miracle, and people don't like miracles, so that's why Willie had to die. At least it ends with Willie singing in heaven, waiting for us to come join him. A whale singing opera at the Met suddenly makes the concept of Ratatouille not as outlandish. There's no doubt that Make Mine Music is by far my least favorite Disney movie I have watched so far. It's right at the bottom of the list, and right now I can't think of another movie that will take its place anytime soon. It might be hanging there at the bottom for a while. Thank you for listening to This Happy Place, a Disney podcast. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Threads at This Happy Place Podcast. And if you want to keep up with my rankings, you can follow my Letterboxd page at This Happy Place. Once again, thank you for listening. And remember, there is a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day.